All right, welcome everybody. This is Professor Farhad Gajari, part of the CUNY Lehman staff representing the Bronx. And this is the sample final exam for CUNY Lehman for statistics at Math 132. And the idea of these series of videos are just to go over the final exam that you'll have towards the end of your semester. And what I'll be doing is, for your sample final, there'll be, how many? There's going to be 8 questions. And what I'll do is, I'll make a video for each question, going over, everything and trying to break all these questions down for you. And we'll also do extra questions so you could feel better practicing the problems. Anytime during the video, if you feel like you're stuck or you're lost, you could always pause. You could rewind, or if you want, you could email me or your professor and to go over the questions that you have. But this should be really good for you, and yeah, let's do this. So what I did was, for question 1, I just wrote it out over here for us, so it'd be nice and easy for us to see. So let's read it together. It says, question 1. In a survey of 1,465 internet users, chose to respond to this question posted on a newspaper's electronic edition. Is news online as satisfying as print and TV news? 52% of the respondents said yes. So let's see the first part. It says, determine whether the study is an experimental or an observational study. So for part A, let's see. We need to understand, let's understand what's going on in the problem. It's saying that there's a survey that 1,465 internet users are responding to, that whether or not they find online news as satisfying as print or TV news. So what does it mean to be an experimental or observational study? Let's just go over the definition real quick. And here it is. I wrote it out for us. Here, an experimental study is, in an experiment, we apply some treatment and then proceed to observe its effects on the individuals. So notice that for an experimental study, you have to apply some sort of treatment. Like, think of like a placebo effect, where you're giving some sort of pill, or you're giving something to the applicants or to the individuals, and you're trying to see if something changes. Okay? Here, within an observational study, we observe and measure specific characteristics, but we don't attempt to modify the individuals being studied. So notice that, think within an observational study, you're just looking at the experiment, or you're just observing. You're not doing anything to the individuals who are being surveyed or being watched. That's the difference between an experimental and observational. And if you look at this study over here, notice that the people who are being surveyed, they're not being given anything. So for this question, it will just be an observational study. Okay, this will be your solution for letter A. Okay, what about the next one? It says identify the sample and the population. All right, well, let's see. What does it mean? What do these two definitions mean? So let's go over them right now. And here, the population is the complete collection of all measurements or data that are being considered, and the sample is a sub-collection of the members selected from a population. So what on earth does this mean? Basically, when you think of population, you should think of big picture, okay? What is the overall thing that's being studied or observed within the question? And a sample is the smaller sub-collection of the population. So here, identify the sample and identify the population. Here, for some reason, this always gets a lot of people tripped up when we talk about the population. Here, it's very easy to say, oh, well, what's the big picture here that the 1,465 internet users, this is the major thing, right? This is all the people being studied. And you would think that this is the population, but it's not. And in fact, that the population would be all internet users, okay? Because you have to think that the population is talking about the grand scheme of things. This 1,465, this will refer to the sample, because the population is talking about all the internet users in the whole world. You know, a population is you have to think big picture for population. And a sample would just be this 1,465, okay? Now, we look at this 52% value. What does this 52% value refer to within this question? Is it a statistic or a parameter? So this is for part C. Let's go over the definition of a statistic and a parameter, and it's pretty straightforward. It's not too bad at all. Here, for a statistic, it's a numerical measurement describing the characteristic of a sample, and a parameter is the measurement describing the population. So just think think sample, statistic, population, parameter. Notice that within the question, it's saying that these 1,465 internet users, 52% of them responded by saying yes, that they found that the online news was just as satisfying as the print and TV news. So this 52% has to deal with the sample of the 1,465. So this numerical measurement is talking, it's just a statistic. Okay? All right, not too bad. And here, it's saying identify a major problem with this study. Okay, so for this one, there are many answers, or there are many biases that you could take out from this, but a pretty straightforward one is, let's see. Can you find, what I want you to do is try and pause the video and think of a bias that you have, that you could generate from this study, right? And if you're, and during the video, I'll be saying that a lot. Like I'll say, hey, pause the video and try and do this by yourself. Because if you're just gonna watch me do everything for you, you have to learn to practice on your own. And what I'm gonna do is after I say like, oh, pause the video, you could, I'll give the solution right after. So here, notice that internet users are, are responding to the question whether online news is just as satisfying. So there's a bias here, because if the question is saying like, oh, is online news better or more satisfying than print and TV news, then if you're asking people who are already on the internet, there's some sort of bias within that. Like if you would have asked someone who doesn't go on the internet whether or not that online news is just as satisfying, they probably wouldn't say no. And notice that this 52% it's like a 1/2, if you look at this and you say, oh yeah, online news is just as satisfying. But that's not the case, because the survey is a little biased, because the people who are being asked the question are already internet users. So that would be the kind of quote unquote identifying a major problem within the study. There are of course many others that you could write out, but this is just the first one that comes to my mind. So there is a bias of asking internet users this question, right? Because of course people who are already on the internet are going to say, oh hey, I like to read news on the internet more than on print or TV. Okay, so this was the solutions for the first question number 1, and this is from A to D. And what I did here was I printed out some extra sample problems for question 1 for you to go over. So what I'll try and do is within like the YouTube link or whatever, I'll try and put this up. So what you could do is try and pause the video and copy these questions down, and then these questions are designed to be extra sample questions for question number 1. Okay, they're supposed to kind of help you go over the ideas of experimental, observational, sample, population, statistic, parameter, and identifying a major study. So what I want you to do is pause the video, copy these questions down, and then try and do these by yourself. What it's stating is, for each of the following, identify the population, the sample, and whether the given value is a statistic or a parameter. So for each question, there should be an A, a B, and a C. And what's the population? What's the sample? And what does the number within each of the problems, what does it refer to? Does it refer to the sample or to the population? Okay. All right, so let's say you copy the questions down and you want to go over the solutions. Let's see. So for the first one, it says a recent California health interviewer survey included 2,799 adolescent residents of California. Okay, so the population would be all California residents. Okay, you have to think of the big picture idea. Okay, right? If there's a interview survey for, by the California Health Interview Survey, it's talking about all the residents in California. The sample would be the 2,799 people who were surveyed, right? And let's see, this value here, is it a statistic or a parameter? It would be a statistic because let's see. Let me pause the video real quick and think about this. Statistic because this 2,799 it refers to the sample. It does not refer to all the residents of California. So this number over here, this 2,799, will count as a statistic. Let's look at the next problem over here for, let's say, A, B, and C. The population will be, let's see, according to the Census Bureau, the total number of housing units in the United States. So this would be all housing units in the United States, okay? This would be the population, right? It's all the houses within the United States. And is there a sample within this? Let's see. Well, for sure, notice that in the problem it's saying that the total number of housing units. So all the housing units in the United States is 132,802,802,859. This will have to be a parameter because it's talking about this number refers to all the units, all the housing units in the United States. So is there a sample? I would say there's no sample because if this refers to all the housing units, there's no sample that's being taken into consideration. So here I would say no sample. Let's look at the next part. If you have A, B, and C, right? It says in a study of 400 babies born at, that's a typo. That should say 4 different hospitals in the New York State. It was found that the average mean at birth was 3,152 grams. So here, in a study of 400 babies born, and I would say that the population, population would be all babies. All babies, okay? The sample would be the 400 babies born in New York State. And notice that this 400 babies is talking about the sample. So this would be a statistic. Okay. Here's another question that we could kind of go over. If you want, you could pause the video and go over it yourself. And let's say you're done looking at it and having the answers. So let's review it. Here it says in a Harris Interactive survey of 2,276 adults in the United States, it was found that 33% of those surveyed never travel using commercial airlines. So let's see, the population would be all adults in the United States. Okay? And actually now, to come to think of it, I would say that this would be all babies in New York State. Okay. That makes more sense because we're talking about it within a specific region. And this is the United States and this is New York State. For the sample, it would be 2,276 adults, and that this 33% will be a statistic because it's talking about the 33% of these 2,276 adults within the survey. So here we have a statistic. Okay. All right, let's go to the next part. I have one final question for you guys to kind of go over together that I cooked up, and it's right here. So what I want you to do is pause the video, try and look at the question yourself, and try and identify the population, the sample, and here for part C, determine whether the study is an experiment or an observational study, and identify a major problem within the study. All right. And now let's say you're coming back to the video. Let's take a look. Here, the physicians' health study involved 22,071 male physicians. Based on random selections, 11,037 of them were treated with aspirin, and the others were treated with, were given placebos. So automatically, I'm just gonna write experiment over here, right? This is for sure an experimental study because the people within the study are given some sort of like placebo, or they're given something. You're not just observing them, okay? Here, what would the population be? The population would be, well, let's see, this would be all male physicians that are being studied, okay? What would the sample be? It would be 22,071 male physicians. And what's a major problem within the study? Let's see, it says the study stopped early because it became clear that the aspirin reduced the risk of myocardial infarctions by a substantial amount. Okay. Identify a major problem within the study. Where are the female physicians? Why are they only testing this product on males? Why aren't they testing this product on females? Okay. I'm sure there are other major problems within the study that you could think of, but this one will work just fine. All right. I really hope that this helped. How long was this video? 17 minutes, 30 seconds. That's not too bad. All right, so we did the first question over here, this part over here, right? And in the next video, we're gonna work on question 2. All right, see you there.